Hello, friends, and welcome to the Weekend Catch-Up Club, the coffee morning show brought to you live every Saturday and available later on demand at youtube.com/gamertagged. It is episode 22, the final show of the season. It is, of course, the Christmas show, and I have brought all of the A-team together for one incredible conversation. It's going to be a farewell to the generation, but also talking about our favorite games of 2020. What a year it's been. But as you can see, we have Tom Nook joining us down there in the corner. We have Sean Lebeau, top right, and Liban Ali, my good friend, one and all, bottom left. Welcome, Hello. Chaps. Welcome. Liban, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm in the festive spirit. This is all I've got Christmas related. I don't know if you guys can see. Right, it says ho 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 across the top, but my headphone is covering it. But I'm in the Christmas spirit, I guess. I'm here.
Yeah. That's good. You've got the festive colours going on. You know, you're complementing my blues going on. We've got a little bit of a Hoth ice thing going on.
We're just working on the same level. It just works like this, Ross.
Yeah,
you should know this by now.
Yeah. We complement each other like so well. Yeah. It's great. I love it.
So it's just great. Yeah.
Yeah. Sean, you're representing like both. We've both got the hats on. We've both got the jumpers on. How you doing?
I'm very good. In case anyone knows, I was sniffing the bottle that Albert just got pouring. I am not sponsored by it, but today's guest appearance from Sean is powered by roasted pineapple rum liqueur. So I'm just going to get that going.
Oh my goodness, who's that joining us bottom corner? It's Mr. Eric Gibbs. No, we still can't hear you, buddy. We're having some technical difficulties on your end. But that's fine. We've got Tom Nook there to look at you and stuff. The poor dude's just going to have to like sit there. Oh no, Eric. It's such a travesty of technology.
Come join us for Christmas, Eric.
I know. Can you like write it down on a piece of paper and just hold it up to the camera or something? Is that no? There's no audio coming at all. The poor lad. Oh my goodness. Well, I have a very merry tankard full of hot chocolate and marshmallows that are beginning to slowly melt because I can't actually get to the hot chocolate because there's too many marshmallows. So anyway, never mind.
There's nice compliments already in the chat.
There are. It's great to see everybody kind of getting together and hanging out for the final show. Oh my goodness. Liban, do you have a nice beverage to keep you toasty this fine morning, this frosty morning?
I've just got a basic Nescafe coffee over here, gold edition. I really like it.
Wow, the gold is bringing some festive bling to your coffee though, so that's pretty cool.
It tastes great, so it's keeping me awake, so it's clearly working.
I can only assume that Eric is hitting like the bottle or something. He's probably on like just Texas rum or something right now, bourbon maybe.
He said, "One moment." I think he's got an idea.
Oh, he's got an idea. Sorry, final show of the year, but not the final show coming in from the chat. Absolutely, we will be back in 2021 with more. Weekend catch-up clubs, of course. It is a great show. I love doing it. I have a lot of fun, and I can usually wrangle some friends into to join me as well. But we've got a great show planned for everybody today. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about our favorite games of the generation. It's like a goodbye, farewell, hashtag sad face to the generation as well. But we also want to talk about our favorite games of the year, and I think we're going to be talking probably at length, of course, about the cyber elephant of 2077. And I have no doubt we're going to be talking a lot about that as well. So, but I'm not going to say anything about that because I have talked at such length about Cyberpunk 2077 in previous shows. So I'm going to hand it over to you guys, to you, Sean, and you, Liban, because Eric has completely left the building. We've just got a silhouette for him now. So we'll maybe just keep the Tom Nook silhouette there or something. But chaps, tell me this year for you guys, what has been your big gaming moments? I would say let's kind of phrase it like that. Liban, if you want to hop in first. Yeah,
Liban,
yeah,
take
sure.
it away.
So I can't say this generation, right? Because we're in the generation. So previous generation.
Yep.
Definitely had some killer releases. I don't think I came across a game that had me. Well, actually, wait, that's a lie. Actually, no. If I'm talking about this year specifically,
Yeah.
then it has to be Ghost of Tsushima for me. I adore the hell out of that game. Yeah, that the world, the characters, what's going on, the overall story as well, and just the follow-ups they've done with the Legends update overall. It's a game that I don't really get emotional, right? Like, I just don't. But once credits rolled and then that music kicked in, and I was like, oh my God. Like, I can't believe that actually happened. Obviously, I don't want to spoil anything, just in case anyone hasn't played it from beginning to end, who wants to play eventually.
Sure.
I think it's just a good example of how a company can capture a culture so well when they put in the work that's necessary. And obviously, just reading back in regards to articles and interviews and how they hired specialists to come in to look at certain things, historians, how they went over to Sony Japan to get their input on it as well. Clearly shows why Ghost of Tsushima was so good. So that's my game. Personally, my game of the year.
Okay. Sean.
Well, I'm going to be a bit more... I'm going to try and follow your question exactly. Was it moment? Because if it was moment, gaming moment, I think it might be not a game itself.
Okay.
But the actual reveal of what the PlayStation 5 looked like. Because I haven't seen the internet come together so greatly to abuse the look and the design of the console. And it was funny because I thought there would be at least 50-50. Some people would be like, yeah, that's cool. But there's a lot of people like, oh, that's a thing. That's maybe you'll get used to it in time. And then the amount of memes that just came out of the way it looked. Like I saw people making it look like it's a modem, or people like slapping two things together on a phone book together, and like buildings that look similar.
Yeah.
And So I would say my biggest gaming moment would be was it July or August? Or was it just before the consoles went pre-ordered? Anyway, it was the reveal of the PS5 look itself. It was, it was
something.
Hilarious.
Quite something. And what about your game of the year? First of all.
Oh man,
putting you on the spot.
This is mean. Okay, so for the last maybe 5-6 months since I finished it, I have held Final Fantasy VII Remake to high regard. And the more I think about it, the more I talk to people about it, it's not the nostalgia, because I never played Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, you're a Final Fantasy newbie, right?
So, well, to the 7, because I played 15, the big one, the last big one.
Right, yeah.
I completed that, and I was like, okay, cool, I get it, but it's obviously not the traditional Final Fantasy that most people fell in love with, which would have been the turn-based one.
Yep.
So I played 7, only known about Cloud, Aerith, Barrett. Sometimes I got the names mixed up because I never really played those games, but I kind of knew what Sephiroth, and I kind of knew the basics and stuff.
Okay.
But I had never looked into the story, and I played this. I was like, cool, I'm going to go into this. There is no nostalgia. Hit me with everything you've got, Square. And the fact that it was still 10 out of 10 for me without the nostalgia was a good testament to, wow, this could be probably my biggest game of the year, because imagine if I had the nostalgia on top of that as well. That would have been perfect. It was beautiful. I know it was, people regard it as part 1, and it is just Midgar. But without me knowing what else there was still to come, this was a full package with a to be continued kind of thing. So like most games would have, or films would have. I fell in love with the way it looked. I just fell in love with the mechanics, the fighting, the music. Oh my goodness, the music in the remake was fantastic. So when I finished that, I was like, this is a strong contender. And every game after that, I would always compare back to 7 Remake. And I was like, wow, this is close. But the feeling I had for story, mechanics, fighting, music, every other game that didn't make it to the top spot was because they didn't have a good 10 out of 10 with one of the categories. You probably hear a lot about The Last of Us and stuff, but for me, The Last of Us was about the story. The music was okay, but Final Fantasy music was better. The mechanics in Final Fantasy, great, but Last of Us was just a bit short of there. So using science and facts, all of those things kind of ticked more boxes for me in 7 Remake.
Yeah, the music in Final Fantasy has always been like a high watermark feature of the series. It's always had these incredible like themes throughout, and I'm wondering if we can. I don't know if we can or not, but the crazy Texan in the back wants to try and say something. So I'm wondering. Not really. It's super quiet, it's super echoey. It's not really working, I'm afraid, buddy.
This is like hell for me.
Oh no!
It's like it's coming through your PC rather than your mic.
Yeah, it's like the mic isn't picking up anything.
My PC is like on the other side of the room, and it doesn't even have a mic. Like this is the mic, so I don't quite understand what's going on.
Wow. I mean, we can hear you. It's a little bit better, actually. It wasn't much better. So it's just the echo. We're getting echo as well. So I don't know. what's happening.
But we can hear him.
We can hear you. That's the most important thing. We can hear Eric.
You can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
As long as you're clear and loud.
I'll probably have to go turn down the monitor in a minute because it's where the other things run. All right. So
Okay.
where are we at? So I know where we're at.
Your game of the year, basically, is what we're talking about.
Oh, okay. So obviously it totally was. No, it wasn't that.
Oh no. Eric.
So no. I think Miles is probably my favorite game of the year. So
Yeah.
Wow.
between Miles and Yakuza are my two favorite gaming experiences of the year, definitely, by far.
And Miles is I haven't played it, I've got it. But isn't that like a shorter package?
Yeah, but that's actually not a bad thing. So, some of the greatest games that we played of this last couple generations are small, bite-sized games. It gives us that experience, that great experience of what it boils it down to its essence. And I think that's what this does. It takes the Spider-Man game, which was my game of the year a couple of years ago, and takes some of the best parts of it, adds in all of the unique, amazing stuff in Miles' universe, and creates this great story and refines all of the gameplay. And it's the truly first experience I had that felt next gen. That it's that thing that I'm walking away from now. Like any other game I've played on the PS5 that I've been just like, that's the watermark that I have for next gen. And so far I haven't, so far since it's been out, I have not hit that watermark again.
Wow.
I agree
Definitely not
wholeheartedly.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So correct.
So, I think the
That's a
short
good point
length of
about-
Miles, because I really do agree, because the short length of Miles really works to its advantage. There's no fluff. So everything's just go. It's important. You need to pay attention to it. And just addition to what he's saying, obviously, swinging at, I know a lot of people get kind of.
Hi, Eric. He said his piece and he's left.
A lot of people get hooked on like whether it's 30 or 60, but swinging as Spider-Man at 60 FPS, it's like I can't go back now. It's like I've been ruined. Like I've been poisoned.
Really?
It's what's happened now, and like I've obviously had the opportunity to play Miles from beginning to end, and I think definitely the short length works better to its advantage than the previous Spider-Man game, which is still a great game, but there's just no extra stuff. It's just all Miles, all story, and it gets to the point, which makes it so much better as well.
Yeah. Speaking of like,
I gotta agree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll say shorter games. Like I just remembered, like the Lost Legacy is like one of my favorite Uncharted entries, and that's because, like Liban said, the fluff is cut. Like you aren't getting the filler or the bits that is just there to build the world out a bit more. Like you're just getting like really good story, great characters, a bit of action. Sometimes that might not work for certain things, like the whole chess piece portrayal of storytelling. Like this character goes there, this character goes there, but you appreciate it more when it's coming from a game that has done the big thing. So Uncharted 4 has done the big open world, and when you condense it, you appreciate it more. So I'd imagine Miles, when you condense the Spider-Man experience down, you're just getting the meat, and that works really well. So I'm looking forward to playing.
I totally agree. Eric, go for it.
It's funny because I went back and played the enhanced version of the original Spider-Man game, and I was thinking, God, there's just so much filler that just doesn't need to be a great story, and I'm just like, it kind of sucks that like the game I thought was game of the year just a couple of years ago, it's already been trumped by this amazing this amazing game, and it's, like I said, the story's just so good, and the
Yeah.
characters are so good. It's just, totally.
For me,
totally filled-
So-
what made Miles Morales so good is because, we were saying that they cut out the fluff, and it is this kind of Lost Legacy condensed version of what is everything that was great about the Uncharted, and Miles Morales does the same. But they still manage to have like the downtime in Miles Morales, those slower character moments where not a lot of action is happening, but it's just the character building, the relationship building. And that could easily be construed as, well, that's just fluff. Why is that there? But it doesn't feel like fluff. It feels like it's so important. And it is these quiet moments, but it still feels so good. And that is testament to, the writing, the acting, the animation work that goes into all of this stuff. Is really impressive.
It's kind of one of those things where and it is a buyer's preference kind of thing. But I think of, wow, there's hair on my microphone. I think of, do you want an amazing condensed 2-hour movie that like just the greatest special effects you've ever seen, the greatest story, or do you want a 13-part TV series that's okay? And that's how I feel about this.
Yeah.
This is that 2-hour movie that you're like, you walk out of it and you go, wow, okay, that just changed me. That's how I feel about Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be thinking about how many games out there that I've played that could have done with being probably 5 hours less, and seeing if it would have been a better experience. And the thing is, I think a lot of games could do with that. But again, like mentioned earlier, if it's coming from, if it's a sequel of something that you've seen that is bigger, so like Eric saying, he loved Spider-Man as a game of the year 2 years ago, but when you take the bits out of it that probably don't fit, it still really works.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of RPGs now. I'm like, they're shorter.
Yeah, it's interesting because
my two favorite games. Sorry, I can't hear you guys. So I might be started going. My two favorite games. One is like 150 hours worth of gameplay, and the other one's like 15. So I mean, it just kind of depends on who tells the story the right way.
Yeah. And also it's interesting that 2018 never felt like it had fluff at all. It felt like it was already a pretty condensed, like really tight package. But then when you see Miles Morales, where it does feel maybe a little bit too short at times, but the quality bar is equal to and then even greater than 2018 Spider-Man, that it shows that something that I didn't think was padded out maybe is, but for RPGs, I think there's this need to make it feel like it is like this kind of quote unquote value for money. It's stuffed with things to do. It'll take you 100 hours, 200 hours, and it's not actually required for quality. It is just this checklist of stuff, and it's not actually required if it makes you feel like it's you're kind of time wasting. You're doing all these fetchy stuff that it's not really necessary. It's just something to do in the world because they've created this huge world. I'm talking about other RPGs here, not specifically Miles Morales or Spider-Man. But they're thinking, oh God, we've got this huge landmass. We need to start just like stuffing it with things to collect or things to investigate. And it's really interesting that Miles Morales didn't fall into that trap because it had to be a smaller game. It was like this kind of spin-off, tighter budget. But also, it doesn't feel like a tight budget game. It feels like a full blown massive production. But it's just a shorter story, and I think it's a great thing that we could, if we get more of those, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I think the turnaround would be much quicker for these kind of games if it's just a little bit shorter. So we might be able to get more experiences inside that universe. I know that's something they've talked about doing, is having a lot more experiences.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it with games like I'm going to reference the Dishonored series by Arcane Studios. They obviously had the two, Dishonored 1 and 2 were massive games, because they had to create the world of both Dunwall and Karnaca. But once those worlds are kind of established in the main games, they can do these spin-off titles like Death of the Outsider, which is a shorter game, it's more condensed, but it still gives you all of the tech that was established already. So all that like immediate outlay of time and resource and everything and production time has been created. And then they tap that for, okay, we've actually got these side characters from the main games. let's give them like a full-blown story. But it is a budget title, but it doesn't feel budget because everything that has been already established just gets moved over and then refined and then a little bit extra polish on top of it. I don't think you can do that just straight off the bat because then it will feel like a budget title. But if it's something huge and then they take the same world, but refine it a bit more and create stories and then establish those stories more than anything.
Yeah.
And I think in a year where we've gotten some really big games, and I mean this being one of them, the Cyberpunk game. I'm going to bring this up. This prop is going to be used quite a bit today. You asked me in January. This game probably would have thought would have been my favorite game of the year.
Sure.
And no, it's a much smaller. Actually, a lot of the games that I found that's refined gameplay and storytelling are much smaller games this year. So,
yeah.
I think it poses a real good. Actually, I want to pose a question to all of you in regards to that. In regards to these small experiences, like we're not necessarily, and obviously for those watching, we're not necessarily saying the bigger games are any worse because of their length or trying to add more to build up overall. It's just that from what we played previously, we see these condensed games just provide a much sharper experience overall, which is fine. So could you guys pick one game that you played, that you feel could have been done better if it was a more condensed experience?
Ooh, Sean's champing at the bit to answer this one. Okay.
I'm sorry. There is one game out there which I should have loved. Took a week off work to play. This is not this year, by the way. This is like last 2 years. That I should have loved, and I could have loved it more if it was shorter. And
I think I know what this is. I think I know what this one is. Okay, but go for it. Yeah.
Well, it's Red Dead Redemption 2.
I was right. Yeah.
Yes.
I loved Red Dead Redemption. The world is amazing, but every small attention to detail that Rockstar love to put in was a bit too much. As in, you could do an entire day's worth of game in the universe of just doing chores, and
same on this one.
Yeah, if it was shorter, I'm not sure if it'll still be the same experience that they want you to believe, but it definitely would be a lot better for me to digest and just kind of get through. Because I've heard the story beats when you stick to only the main story is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I've never made it out of Act 3. Act 2 was it Act 2? That was like 60 hours or something.
It's pretty huge. Yeah, I kind of know what you mean. And that is a game that is so polished. Like, it's a technical watermark for the generation for sure. But it gets a lot of grief for feeling just very, very slow, very methodical, very plodding, and more for the mechanics of the character movement, especially in combat and that kind of thing. And I think that is fair. But then you look at something like Death Stranding, which is a very, very slow game. It's all about walking and delivering parcels. But that is a game that I was riveted by because of you're walking everywhere, but it feels like the environment is deliberately a challenge. It's not, we're going to just make you walk because we want to make you walk. Or combat became a bit more responsive in Death Stranding, whereas I was in a gunfight in Red Dead, and Arthur is just sauntering with his gun out. And it's like, no, there should be a switch here to his movement where it just becomes a lot tighter when he's in a gunfight or when he's in kind of combat. Yeah. And it's just fascinating to see. One is very both games can be played very, very slowly, but Death Stranding was so engaging for its environment and the weirdness that was going on, very slow as well. And Red Dead was this Western kind of fantasy, super impressive, but it just felt so stretched out and plodding that I do kind of agree with you.
I tend to look at it this way. If you lose my interest, this is somebody who's played 1,000 JRPGs and have done tons of, if you could lose my attention, then there's probably something going on there. And I even have giant Red Dead poster behind me, and I felt exactly the same. I felt if they could have carved off just a little bit, the traversal was a little bit different, and just progressing your character through situations much quicker and a lot tighter, I think would have done that game a lot of because I've actually heard from quite a few people the same issue. So it's not just us.
Yeah.
Wow.
Liban, what else floated your boat this year in terms of like games that you loved? And then we'll kind of move things on to like the generation as a whole.
Sorry, could you repeat that for me?
He's tuned out. He's fallen asleep. Other games that you really, really enjoyed this year?
This year. Okay, right. Let's see. Remind me if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, guys. When did Observer come about? Was it this year? Was it the year before?
It was the year before, I believe.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, but System Redux got a next gen version this year. So you could argue that it also came out this year, yeah.
Came out this year. I mean, so the thing is, I played Observer first on the Switch, right?
Oh, wow.
So me playing on the Switch and then playing it on the PS5, there's a massive difference, right?
Yeah.
Visual quality, huge difference. But that game is incredibly trippy, right? It's not necessarily anything to do with horror, but it kind of gives you that sense of fear while you're playing through it because you just don't know what's going on. And then it tries to like just completely mess with your head, especially when you're going into other people's memories, seeing what happened to them, and like the whole like environment just shape shifting and everything. And you know I think Observer is a good example of a game that's good on its own from a kind of story perspective, but really good but from also a technical perspective. You know, because I feel like artists really got a chance to just, you know, really stretch their legs and just go nuts all over it. Like Observer's those kind of games where you think you're walking through a door, you turn around, there's a wall behind you that wasn't there. You turn around again, it's a completely different hallway. You look to your right, what you saw there before is completely gone. So I don't know what wizardry they pulled. That game really works on your brain, but obviously I'm cheating a little bit here because it came out the year before, but since I've only played the PS5 version recently, that's a game I've enjoyed a hell of a lot.
When you say PS5 version, is it like the official upgrade?
It's an official upgrade.
Yeah.
It's because I've got it for the Series X as well. As soon as it got announced, I pre-ordered it for the Series X, and it is stunning on the next gen version. It's almost like that, like that's the version it should have been all this time. Yeah, stunning.
Because I was holding back because of the reasons of it could always look better. And it's always been on my radar.
Yeah.
That's the game with, is it Rutger from Blade Runner?
Yeah, Rutger Hauer's in it. And it is that cyberpunk horror, which is, it's funny because this came out, I think it was in 2017-18, because that's when Rutger Hauer passed away. And it's like the themes of like jacking in to people's memories and to see how they died. There's a lot of similar themes between 77 and this game as well. There's a lot of those kind of cyberpunk tropes that are really quite stunning, actually. But it's horrifying at times as well in this particular game. And I agree with Liban as well.
So horrifying. So horrifying. You know, guys, if 2077 has upset you, go play Observer. It's the better cyberpunk game.
Yeah. Eric's rocking the Pokemon hat. Is that Animal
jealous.
Crossing you want to
We're all
talk?
wearing hats like that. I just felt jealous.
But you were wearing a hat before, Eric.
You were.
I can't wear a hat. My head's too big.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's an ego thing or just whatever, but yeah.
In real life, your head is not that big, I can confirm.
Yeah, just
Oh man. So Eric, what were your other highlights, game highlights this year?
of the year?
Of the year, yeah.
I mean, we Sean mentioned, Final Fantasy definitely was one, and it was kind of awesome to see. I was watching Sean play, and just kind of the thing of like Final Fantasy was one of my kind of awakening games of JRPGs. So to kind of see the newer version, seeing that with Sean and other people was kind of kind of an awesome thing to see. It's kind of this year is such a blur that it's just kind of but weirdly enough, in a year with Cyberpunks and everything else, Animal Crossing was probably the game I played one of the most. of any year, just because it was such a pivotal thing with my friends and I during lockdown, and it was so nice to watch Ross's wife steal his Switch. That was almost worth me just being like, hey, Ross, you need to get this game Animal Crossing, and then just watching his Switch get totally stolen because of it. It was kind of nice to watch. Thank you, Ross.
I got evicted from my island because of that. Thank you.
It was funny that game. Like, I had Pokemon DLC, I had all these other games, but like the two games I played the most, aside from, Yakuza and the PS5 games at launch, were Animal Crossing and Fortnite, which is just community. It was just such a year for community that it was nice to have those around, because I miss everybody. So
yeah. Do you think Animal Crossing would have been as big if it wasn't due to lockdown? Because I played the previous one, I'm like, it brought us always together in real places. But I would imagine because of lockdown, it was just that bit more helpful to have a game like that.
It was, because I mean, I think it would have sold just fine, but not like it did. I think it was their number one game of the year.
Really?
So that's crazy to think of. I think it actually outsold almost every game this year as well. So
that's wild.
Don't whatever. Maybe, but I think for Nintendo, maybe it just happened to be the highest selling. But I think it is one of the highest selling games of the year.
It landed at the perfect moment, though. That's the thing. It struck at just the right moment. What people needed it, and
then it became that thing. You remember that thing that happened, with the 3DS and the where they started the Wii, where they started advertising hey, your mom should play the Wii, like Wii Bowling.
Yeah,
I started noticing they were doing that for Switch. Like, hey, Ross, your wife likes, this. But I mean, really, honestly, I started seeing advertising for moms for Animal Crossing, and it was just like, it is a crazy game that kind of like, it shouldn't have been as big, but it was needed. It was needed at the time. It was kind of, marketing dream, unfortunately, but it was very much needed.
Yeah.
And it was space in the real world that you could go to. Well, not in the real world, but it's like, it wasn't just like a multiplayer game. It was like, here is an island where things are, quite blissful. I think that really helped. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, just to add to that
discussion with this year, there was a lot of cyber tourism, essentially, that was going on during gaming. There was a lot of games that we were playing during the year that was basically like, I'm going to go hang around Yakuza so I can go tour around and take pictures and do all this stuff around these neighborhoods, and Shenmue and all these other games. That was our way to get out this year. And it's so thankful that we have a hobby that lets us do that.
Yeah. Liban, you wanted to say something?
So Animal Crossing is actually the one that just came out. So it's Nintendo's highest for the Switch anyway, the second highest selling title on the Switch right now. So it did 26.04 million.
Wow!
What? In a year?
It did it in ridiculous quick amount of time. Yeah.
Not even a full year. It came out in March, right?
Yeah. The only game that's beaten it is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and that's at 28.9 million.
Yeah, that game will never go away.
It will.
Mario Kart and Smash Brothers will never go away.
That's incredible.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. Okay, so we're a good half hour in. I want to do a quick special mention to a couple others. I want to call out Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Doom Eternal, and Yakuza Like a Dragon, which Eric has mentioned a little bit. And I really want to call out Cyberpunk 2077 as well. So it is Sean and I talked about this just yesterday, and last week's show, myself and Liban talked about this a lot.
Extensively.
And honestly, I've been playing it quite a lot this week, and for all the bugs, for all the technical problems, it is very quickly becoming one of my favorite games this year. Top 5 easily, top 3 possibly. It is. But anyway, I'm not going to wax lyrical anymore about it. I'm going to hand this over because I know Sean wants to talk about it. I know Eric wants to talk about it. So you guys take the floor. Go for it.
I will start quickly by saying I'm a big fan of Deus Ex. That's my entry into it. I love that kind of cyberpunk genre that was started in 1999. Well, it was Deus Ex, the first one. Cyberpunk was obviously before that genre. And the fun thing I used to do in those types of games was just do everything but the main quest and see how influential it can still be. And you guys might know because I've mentioned it on Twitter and stuff. But I got to the point early in the game. There's not no spoilers because everyone knows Keanu Reeves is in the game. Yeah. But I got to the point where it unlocks the area that you can first explore the part of the city. And I was like, cool, there are side missions, there are crimes, there are all of these side little things that I can check out. I'm going to do that because this looks really cool. 31 and a half hours later, I cleared the entirety of that part of the city and just met Keanu Reeves for the first time. And I was like, whoa, I have probably played a AAA worth of content and I've got my fill and my character is kind of souped up now and great. And I've got loads of cool kind of mini bosses and fought all of these really cool things and taken down waves and seen bots and stuff. And I'm kind of robust. This is the end of the game. And then Ross mentions to me, yeah, you've done a prologue. And I was like, excuse me?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
this is ticking my box for content. If you want that content, I'll leave that there.
It's so funny because we were chatting last night, and Sean, you just went off and did all the side stuff, but you hadn't even started the very first mission in the game, which is the very first heist that leads to you meeting Johnny Silverhand. And I thought it was hilarious. And I must be about 40 hours in, like, very, very similar gameplay style, but I've done a few side missions, a few gigs, but I was just captivated on the characters and the main story. So I was pursuing that. And it's so funny to see the different versions that were like different playthroughs. Eric, how about you?
Oh yeah. I haven't even met Johnny yet.
Yes, Eric.
No. I'm about 30 hours in, and I literally I got the sword. I got the sword for like signing up, like the special souped up one that they have.
I don't even know what that is. So okay.
I've been running around like a Ronin, like finding those like random skirmishes.
Yeah.
And just cutting people's heads off and being.
Can't get enough of ghosts.
That's literally like most of my thing. I've been doing all the side missions and stuff like that. And I think the game, like, that's the sad thing is, any other time with anything else going on, if the game had come out, been nominally buggy, just a little bit buggy, we would have not even talked about that with this game. But unfortunately, we know the other stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That aside, I'm enjoying what I'm playing, but I'm also playing it on a PS5, and I've had to almost like I have a PC. I've had to go in and change all the settings, which is so odd for a console.
Yeah,
that's the huge caveat. That's so weird. As I'm playing on Series X. You guys are playing on PlayStation 5. We're playing on like the best possible hardware that isn't a high-end PC to play this game. And it, for the most part, is a really good experience. Bugs and stuff like that, nothing major, but there's a lot of like minor bugs, like things floating in the air, NPCs wigging out, things like
subtitles. Some interesting ones.
Yeah, but I had it, and I was saying to Sean again on our chat yesterday, if it had launched in this state, but this was like the PS4 version and this was the base Xbox One version, it would have been totally fine. Nobody would have said anything. It's like, okay, there's bugs. It's a huge game. We'll get through it. But because this level of bugs on the next gen versions, and I know it's not the next gen version of the game, but the base version is just is so bad. That's why we're in the mess that we're in at the moment.
If there had been Bethesda level of bugs, because there's certain levels of bugs, and if there had been Bethesda level of bugs, people would have been okay. Because I mean, Hell, Skyrim, people don't remember, was so flipping buggy like the year it came out. And it was game of the year. Like, if it had been at that level, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But like, just the other day before the latest patch, I had a box, this random box that I passed, and it started spinning. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's a spinning box. I jumped on the box. It threw me across the world and killed me. Like,
What?
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, well, okay. So
How is that possible, man?
that's unacceptable. Like, that's just. But I mean, I could restart and the box wasn't there and all this kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah. But it's still kind of like the immersion in that game is kind of a sacred thing in a game like that.
Totally.
That is something to go into. You're supposed to feel like you're V. And when I go in there and a box destroys me, like that's not the immersion factor that we should be getting.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing is, I still love the game. Like, I'm still having fun. I'm cutting people's heads off and, rolling over people's cars and go as fast as I can and capturing it in picture mode and being just this vile human being and then switching over to Animal Crossing and feeling very good about myself.
That's good. That's good.
It is what it is, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is what it is, absolutely. Okay, that's enough Cyberpunk talk because it has been dominating the conversation quite significantly for the past while. So the farewell to the generation section of the show, I've got a few kind of themes that I'm going to throw out to you guys. We obviously want to talk about like our favorite indies of the entire generation, our favorite games of the entire generation, but there was a few things thematically that really struck me this entire generation. And the first one is, the title that I wrote is that the indies brought their AAA game this generation. And I think that's a really good topic as well. Not only that, it felt a lot, certainly in the beginning of the generation, that this was the generation of remasters. So we've got that to dissect as well. And also, obviously, want to talk about games as a service, because that was one of, if not the biggest thing to come out this generation as well. And then we've also got like platform initiatives, which came this generation. We've got, the backward compatibility drop from Xbox that there was it 2015 presser at E3 or thereabouts when they announced that. PS Now cloud streaming became way more robust. So there's other kind of platform initiatives which really came to the fore this generation as well. So I'm going to kick it over to Sean first of all. And where would you like to start out of any of those?
Oh, remasters.
Okay, remasters.
Mostly because the first game I played, I'm going to keep it this year as well. The first game I played on a PS5 was actually the Demon's Souls remaster. Out of all of the remasters I've played, so for anyone still like not wants to know the difference between remakes and remasters is they've taken the base game and they've souped it up, whereas obviously Final Fantasy is done from the ground up. But a good remaster comes from sticking to the source material, making it look good, making sure that the mechanics and everything is like current kind of day ideas, so buttons and stuff like that feels like it's like current thinking and gen and stuff like that. And the thing I love about Bluepoint, who do amazing games anyway, what they did for Demon's Souls, so I didn't touch the original, but I watched it to death and I was like, cool, it stands up, it looks cool, bit ropey, but it's a good testament of the PS3. And what Bluepoint did was they're like, you know what, let's start with the art again, but let's remind people that we're big fans of this game as well. Yeah. And they just redid whatever they could from, they got back like the voice actors to redo lines rather than just add the lines straight back in and port it over. I went with like a magic class because just seeing the lighten and the blooms and stuff that comes off every time you do spells. Interestingly, a lot of people talk about ray tracing and this current gen, and Demon's Souls doesn't have ray tracing, and it made me kind of think, okay, why doesn't a big AAA game from Bluepoint, as known as Demon's Souls, not have it? And it made me kind of learn that ray tracing is good for when there is dynamic lighting, like times of days changing and stuff like that. Whereas Demon Souls, because it's linear and it's set in the story, that there is a certain time of day that lots of these scenarios happen, it doesn't need it. And if you had never told me that this game didn't have ray tracing, I would have been like, no, it probably does, because it looks pretty. And it made me think a lot about kind of remasters and things that come across, if they give the love and attention like Bluepoint does to what they did for Demon Souls. I'll be like, that's fantastic. And it feels good, and they made good quality of life changes, such as you can send equipment back via just your options menu rather than having to travel all the way back. And it's just a good testament, and remasters are fantastic. I also picked up like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit just before Extra Life in November, and that is a good example of it's a remaster, but we're doing probably just the base minimum, which is making it run on your generation of console there, because it didn't feel too different. Whereas Demon Souls is like a whole different kind of game, even though it's the same game and it's the same beats and the same weapons and all that stuff. But the tweaks, the animations and the lighting and the voices and the world and the quality, it's a good example of a remaster. So that's where I'll start with that one. Yeah.
It definitely works when when they do that, and it makes you feel like it's what you remember the game to be like. That's that magical stroke and that kind of development is when it's like, oh, that's the way I remember it playing. Yeah, and you go back and play the original, and you're like, ooh, okay. But like you play the remaster, and you're like, oh, okay. That's what I wanted. So I agree.
Liban, what do you think about not just Demon Souls, but like remakes, remasters in general, this whole generation?
I mean, just to the point of Demon Souls, the significant difference that Bluepoint made to that game, can't be questioned. Clearly a lot of time and effort and care was put into it, and it shows. That's why it's a launch title for the PlayStation 5, and it deserves to be one of those. I think a series of games that got some really good remasters are Crash and Spyro, because they were dormant for a pretty long time. Obviously a few missteps in certain games that came out, and I think obviously Activision and I believe it's Toys for Bob, right?
Yes.
So Toys for Bob, obviously they took over that. The game runs incredibly well. The game looks amazing. They don't do anything different that makes you think, oh, they kind of ruined the experience. It's like Eric mentioned, like you play these games and it's like, okay, I remember this, but it just looks so much better. I think where Activision did it right this time is that, okay, they're like, all right, we're going to redo these games for you. We're going to make it look amazing. It's going to run amazing, but we're not going to go crazy on price. So they've redone these, obviously 3 games for Spyro, 3 for Crash, put it together as a one collection, as a trilogy, and at a fair price as well. So when you combine all those factors, just like not only is it, well, if you haven't played the games before and you're getting all 3 of them at this price, this is a great deal, but the games themselves are still amazing. I didn't finish the original Crash trilogy way back when, but I tore through 1 to 3 when the remakes came out, and Spyro as well. Just absolutely tore through Spyro to the point I platinumed it, basically. That's how much I enjoyed it. Just like, this is where I think remakes do their best, like not only just keeping nostalgia, but just pushing it as much as you can. Just to make it look as good as it can and to run as well as it can. Yeah. So I put the Crash and Spyro trilogies out there because those came back. They did amazing. Due to that, Crash got another game that I haven't played yet, Crash 4, but it looks fun.
It's really good. It's really good as well.
Yeah, I hope Spyro gets one too.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And it's so great to see those mascots come back and find a new audience, as well as the nostalgia factor of us that were PS1 owners and we got to relive them again. And, you know, that's like, you look at these new games and you think, oh yeah, that's exactly how it was when I was playing it on the PlayStation 1. Even though when you go back and play it on PlayStation 1, it looks horrible, blocky polygons and stuff. But for my ones, I'd probably want to shout out another one from Blue Point Games. And that was the Shadow of the Colossus remake, which I had the original Shadow, but I played a little bit of it. But for some reason, on the PlayStation 3, I didn't take to it back then. But when this came out on the second, PS2. Sorry, yeah, PS2. Oh, right. Sorry, I had the HD version on the PlayStation 3. Apologies. not the original one. I apologize. But when I got I know. God, my history. But when I got the PlayStation 4 version of the Blue Point Shadow of the Colossus, I instantly fell in love with it. I thought they did an incredible job of, again, what Sean said about Demon Souls is capturing the whole tone and the feeling of emotion. And in that game, very much of isolation and sadness of Shadow of the Colossus, but to the backdrop of this just amazing technology. It looked so sharp. And that the first time you take out one of the Colossi, it is such a sad moment. And for me, that's a definite highlight of one of the remakes, I would say, not really a remaster as such. But, and also, who can forget Capcom's, one of the start of their big comebacks for the end of this generation is Resident Evil 2. That's probably one of the most impressive remakes I think I've ever seen as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Resident Evil 2 definitely is that thing I was talking about earlier, that what I remember it being, and just sitting back and playing that game. I remember that was my last game to play that E3. Like, I don't know if Sean, if you got to go play that year that they showcased it.
I didn't know.
They actually had you in the police station, Raccoon Police Station. You had to go through this little maze with zombies and stuff, and it was literally the last game I played at E3.
Oh, cool!
And I just was like, "Oh my god, it's so amazing! I can't talk about it for a while, and it's so awesome. It was just so amazing." And I was like, "Oh my god, this is totally the Resident Evil that I've been wanting for so long." And that was such a great game.
Wow!
And plus, there was zombies.
Yeah. I have to admit, so I don't really play horror games, and when Resident Evil 2 remake, is it remake or remaster? It's the remake, isn't it?
Remake, yeah.
It's a remake.
Yeah, it was the first time I played that game, like in total, like Demon Souls, first time I played that game, and I think remakes and remasters are good entry points as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because they are so true to the original. It's not like you're missing something that people be you need to play the original to understand it. No, it's done so well and so true to the source material that it is also the entry point for everyone as well. So that was the first time I played Resident Evil 2, and I was like, I get the hype. I know bits have been slightly tweaked and some more quality of life stuff in there, but when I've looked at the differences, I've kind of got the same beats.
Yeah,
you hand the original Resident Evil 2 to like a player that has grown up with modern graphics and with modern gameplay, and you're like, I'm gonna do what? I'm gonna walk around like a tank and do what? Oh my god, that pixel just went after me. I mean,
yeah.
You're just like, no, it was awesome. Trust me, I'm right. I know I'm right. And then you give him that, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. It's sort of like Final Fantasy VII. Oh, okay, I get it. And that's the amazing thing is with that, if they give it the reverence and they somehow capture the gameplay, and it got done in spades this last generation, which is awesome. And I'm excited to see what happens in next generation or current generation or whatever generation we're in now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move on to indies who brought their AAA game. So, oh my god, this is such a difficult one because there have been so many indie games which have knocked my socks off, and also ones that I'm still completely unaware of. It is such a fertile ground of these creations and these smaller development teams that have done some incredible work. So I really don't know where to begin. So I'm going to pass the buck over to Liban, and I'm going to make him fall on this sword for me. Let's kick us off, Liban.
All right. Indie games. Oh God. Ah, man. I do not know why I'm drawing blank right now. So I'm going to flip it a bit here.
Okay.
I'm going to flip it a little bit. Because I can't think of a proper answer at the moment. So this didn't come out in the PS4 whatever generation, but the generation prior to that, and that is Journey. Yeah. So the indie games obviously are quite well known for their obviously like creative types of gameplay and visuals as well. And I think Journey is just one of those games that came out at that time that was just very different to everything else that was around at that moment as well. A lot of people expected this kind of like, which in a sense, it is a big, grand kind of adventure you're going on. But I don't think they expected the minimal amount of gameplay that you had to do. Yeah. You just kind of had to be in this world, be involved in this world, and just take it one stride at a time. I think especially during a time where people just wanted to run and gun and like all over the place, which is fine. But I think what Journey did differently, and I think the message they were trying to convey as well at the same time, was that just slow down, take a deep breath. I think they try to just convey other messages like, you come across other people's, even like just in real life, like you can communicate, like on certain levels, you might not be able to communicate with someone just because of like language barriers and whatever, but it's possible to communicate regardless. It's possible to work together from people from all sorts of places. And obviously I know the main apex or the ending for Journey was your character, reaching some sort of heavenly, or just reaching the point of the mountain. You see this mountain in the background this whole time and trying to get there. But I think when I think about an indie game that came out, that kind of just, and as I mentioned earlier, just flipped everything on its head. Journey's my choice on that. And obviously they brought it back again for the PS4. I'm not 100% sure if they made any changes to it. I'm assuming they upped the resolution and such. But Journey, I think Journey just, how different it was when it came out, how different its gameplay was, and all the kind of different messages it was trying to convey. That would be the indie game I would pick until I think of something.
Yeah, and a lot of people, that was their first opportunity to play it, because a lot of the Xbox 360 user base switched over to PlayStation 4, and that was their first time ever owning a PlayStation. So there was these games which did get ported over to PlayStation 4, up-resed, and that was the first time ever experiencing something like this. And yeah, Journey's a good shout. And it's got a beautiful soundtrack by Austin Wintory, who's one of my favorite game composers as well. So shout out to him.
It really does.
Yeah.
That game broke me. I was not expecting it. Once I figured out what the ending was and everything about it, I was just like, I remember turning to my daughter and just like, I'm not crying. Like, it broke me. That game just absolutely wrecked me. And and I think around the PS3 360 time period, you started seeing that birth, like you're talking about indie games, you started seeing that birth of like unique and starting to be powerful voices within indie development. And you started beginnings, with the Minecrafts and stuff like that. You started seeing the birth of the AAA, development teams, and that little thing that's been kind of floating around. And they can be extremely powerful within this market. And PS4 and Xbox, they continued. And there were so many powerful games this generation.
Yeah.
I think the thing about Journey, why Journey made such a big impact is that it said so much without really saying anything at all. I think a lot of people got that, and I think a lot of people understood that. And, that's why obviously when someone mentions, like Ross said obviously here, an indie game, to me, that'll always be the first thing that comes to my mind. just something so different, something so loud but so quiet.
Mhm.
You know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It also goes in that thing we were talking about earlier with Miles. You don't necessarily need this long, grandiose game to get the point across. And Journey was one of those games that you definitely didn't need some 400-hour, JRPG to make you, think about who you are as a human being. And that's a powerful thing. That is really a powerful thing.
Yeah, Sean, I'm going to kick it over to you because out of anybody, you know the indie scene better than most.
So when you say indie game that got the AAA, hit the AAA kind of mark, I think
not really for necessarily for like production values, but it's the experience that the power, the experience, the emotion that really felt like it was not expected from an indie game. Yeah.
So I would say I've got two examples, one for 2020 and one for 2 years prior or last year. And those are mostly because they appeared in the top spots for the Game Awards, actually. When you see an indie game in the same category as a AAA game, I'm like, yeah, that's huge. So I would say for the previous Game Awards, I would say Celeste, because that game was emotional. Like Journey, you are chasing the dream of going to this mountain, and it was difficult. It was hard as nails, but it was beautiful. The soundtrack was even better, and the message about kind of anxiety in that game, like hit the mark every time. And I remember seeing that appear in Jeff Keighley's top spots, and I was like, wow, that's fantastic. But more specifically for this year, and I know this might be my answer to another category, but it has to be Hades, because that was up there for, was it action game as well as, it wasn't game of the year.
It was nominated for game of the year.
Game of the year as well, yeah. It was like so many categories. I'm like, Hades up there against The Last of Us, against Doom, and I was like, Supergiant Games, like this is my first Supergiant Games. I've always been a fan of the music from Darren Korb and stuff. In fact, early in January, he came over to the UK and did like a small intimate show, which was fantastic. But the fact that if you follow their journey and just like they did a BAFTA talk a couple of months ago as well, talking about how their team ethic is, like to the point where, as much as I love The Last of Us Part 2, hearing about, crunch culture and stuff, it kind of makes you feel like, okay, I'm enjoying this game, but I don't enjoy it too much because I know a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this. But then when you hear that Supergiant Games, there was a piece that a journalist had taken staff members aside just to ask about what work is like, and they were like, yeah, we don't have crunch. We have forced mandatory holidays and get like your wrists slapped if you work outside of your hours or weekends, and everyone gets these bonuses and they're never really pushed. I know they don't have like the same pressure from business and investors, but when you play something like Hades, and you're like, you know what, I'm enjoying it for every aspect, from the arts to the team to the music to the voice acting. And in the back of your head, you're like, and they didn't have to crunch. And it's just like, it just feels like a whole tight package. Yeah. And I'm so proud of that game because that is a game that I know the casual market who picks up the Call of Duties and FIFAs every year also know about this big indie game, and it's on their radar too. Yeah. And the best thing about that game, we'll talk about it at some point later today, but the fact that it is your roguelike game, but heavily more focused on story, because you don't really get story in those types of games, because you die, you reset, and there is an underlying story of what is tied together. And without spoilers, like when you do kind of reach the end, the way that they keep getting come back in story-wise is like, you can learn a lot from the writing and just the ideas that this kind of small team have put together, and the fact that it was up for a lot of nominations and won, a few, is just fantastic. So Hades would be my, indie game that did the big AAA thing for me this year.
How many runs have you had on Hades, Sean?
I've had only one successful run.
Okay.
but I've got closer to maybe 25 runs. Like I'm not the best, but the good RNG part of it is you will get these godly boons that will kind of boost or complement, or sometimes don't, with some of your loadouts and stuff, and it will just take you to keep replaying to be like, okay, I've got something that really complements this, and this weapon works well with this. This is my run. And sometimes when you get really close to the end, like I can get always to the end, but it just falls down to your skill, not just the RNG. And I love that. I love that it's not like I feel like I'm cheated out of it. It is just something that I know I'm getting better at every time I play it.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where your runs might be only 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes long, and then a lot of the game progresses, and you're like, oh, my runs are now 45 minutes minimum now because I have the better loadouts and I have been attuning my weapons and my abilities. Same thing with Dead Cells. Like Dead Cells, you get like 10-minute, 50-minute runs, and then all of the work that you've been putting in kind of boosts what you can do, and you're like, oh, I'm not dying in these silly ways anymore. And now you're focused on the end goal every time. So
They also introduced something which for me, because I'm terrible at these kind of games anyway, is they have a god mode, but it's not your typical god mode, and then it makes you invincible. It gives you a little bit of an extra boon. So whenever you die, you get like a 10% like damage reduction against enemies. So every time you die, you become more resistant or more kind of tougher a character. So you can, even if you're terrible at these games, you can get to the point where you're getting like a 90% damage reduction because you're getting this like 10% increments every single time you would normally die. So that like helps you to get further. So it's not making it super easy for you, but it is helping you along the way. And they call it a god mode.
So what Ross is saying, he's not very good at Hades.
Yep.
Ross?
Yep.
I've seen Ross play. Ross is getting there.
I'm getting there. Can't. Oh, we've lost Eric. Sorry about that. Sorry. But yeah, okay. So for me, I've got a few listed here, which I'll rhyme off, and a couple of them are not really indies, but they feel like indies, if that makes any sense. So the first one is Tearaway Unfolded, which I know it's Sony first party, but it originally came out on the Vita last generation or previous again generation, and it got ported over to the PlayStation 4. And I absolutely love that game. So there's that. There's the entire catalogue of Supergiant games of Transistor, Pyre, and Hades, which I've pulled out. One that I absolutely adore is Yoku's Island Express.
I know that game.
You do know that game, Sean. And I'm highlighting that one because there are not enough pinball games released in the industry. And this felt like a story-driven, almost like a 2D platformer, but with pinball mechanics, and I adored that. And of course, the music is so jolly and so wonderful as well. And lastly, I want to just shout out a Plaguetale Innocence. So this is by Asobo Studios, who later I found out they actually have a long-term development partnership with Microsoft, and they actually developed Flight Simulator for Microsoft as well. But they actually did this super small budget medieval French set tale about a brother and sister during the height of the plague, and the production values of this game are so good, and it's just a wonderful shout out for that little team as well. But guys, such an incredible selection, like hundreds of indie games that we have got to choose from. It's just amazing. But Tearaway, I wanted to shout out again because that allowed you to, at the time, you could like sync up a tablet or a phone, and you could draw these little paper shapes and import them into the world. So my game was like littered with Deadpool masks and bat symbols as snowflakes and all this kind of stuff. And it used the DualShock 4 in a way that I don't think any game has ever been able to capitalize on since. And I'm hoping that with the DualSense on the PlayStation 5 introducing more like haptic feedback features, we'll get more things like that, like what the DualSense, like what the DualShock 4 gave us, like the light bar, like the motion 6-axis motion controls, like the touchpad in that game. It's really used to the fullest. The touchpad button on the PS4 you could press, and there was these massive drums in the game. So whenever you pressed it, the skin of the drum would bounce you. So it became like a platforming mechanic. The 6-axis controls, you could control like which way the snowflakes would blow and all this kind of stuff. And it used the DualShock in such a way that I don't think any game has really used it to that degree. And I'm hoping that maybe the next generation will give us something comparable to that. I think Astrobot is probably the closest so far. But
yeah,
amazing games. So amazing games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Just wait. You were talking about the DualSense, though. I'm waiting for, like, was it David Cage or whatever his name is over at
A Quantic Dream.
yeah,
Quantic
whatever he
Dream.
does with that thing for, like, whatever game he has cooked up next. I'm gonna end up throwing that thing against the wall. Like, I know he's gonna be crazy with it. Like, yeah.
David Cage.
Push
Yeah.
every button, use your toes, something. I don't know.
I know. It's got to be something weird, right? It's got to be. It's got to be. So, okay, let's move into a slightly, for better or worse, I would probably say a darker time. A slightly darker time of the generation. And that is games as a service.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
not,
was
not,
wondering-
You're like the worst
I wasn't
game
so sure where you were going
ever.
with this.
I was real scared.
Did I catfish you all there? Is there something else? So, games of a service have been probably the most prominent genre of game in the industry the past few years. Certainly since 2014, Destiny came out. It promised this like constant, perpetual existing world where it would be your one character would last for 10 years. They would constantly evolve the world. Yes, it didn't quite work out like that, but Destiny 2 came out and they've been providing a hub, a world, a constant drip feed of content for the past, when did it come out actually? When did Destiny 2 come out? Was it 16?
It would have been 3 years ago almost.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that really set a bit of a bar for the industry. And then off the back of that, we had things like The Division coming out with their games of a service, which is probably one of the better examples, Division 2 certainly. And then, we've had ones which haven't quite nailed it, such as Anthem. I'd love to get everybody's opinion on what do you think, I'll start with Liban. What do you think games of a service meant to this generation? And what do you think of the good ones as well?
Yeah, so disclaimer. So these types of games, I actually don't have much experience with. I've generally geared away from them because I preferred more of I buy the package, I have the complete experience there and then. I play from beginning to end, and then I'll move on.
Mm-hmm.
I think with this coming generation, we should see these games as a live service kind of like titles be produced a lot better. Hopefully they've learned on a lot of the mistakes from the previous generation. In particular, obviously, not all titles did it well. You mentioned The Division, I've heard lots of good things about. Destiny's still rocking, which is great. Obviously, we had Anthem, but that's coming back eventually.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky had the biggest comeback ever and is doing phenomenally now. But I think what needs to happen is I understand obviously they have these roadmaps ahead of time, right? So I'm not quite, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not quite sure if they announced this ahead of time before you actually jump into these games. Is that correct?
Sometimes they do, yeah. Yeah, I think the overall strategy is to have, we want this to last like 4 years and this is what we want to do. And I guess it depends on the title, but for the most part, I'd like to think they would have a bit of a roadmap.
Yeah, because I think it's difficult in the sense that when you are just looking to put out a game that's a complete package, the idea is that it's done. And you said, obviously, especially nowadays, it's done, but it's not done. So you kind of like, you get your launch day patch or whatever, but the game in of itself, all the content is there. I see the difficult thing with games as a live service where I could probably easily sit here and say something like, well, this 4 or 5 year roadmap, all this content should already be good to go. Like if they were to just throw it all out in the next few months, then they'll be able to do so. But I guess obviously with the higher ups and management, there's a lot more pressure in just getting a certain part of the game out, ready to go, and then hoping you can fix other bits and pieces in time for when you want to drop it. But I think the generation, obviously, again, just showed an example of somewhere it has been done well and somewhere it's crashed and burned to an extent, but they're trying to bring it back overall, essentially. But it's I think the games as a live service, it's a difficult one because it's a sense of like, okay, this is what is going to happen, but I don't think if they even know if it will actually happen because so many things change within that time.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Yeah, you look at something like Fallout 76 or Anthem, and you really, really want those things to succeed, but they don't really seem to have quite the roadmap that they need. And I think part of that is too, like you have these games, they're X millions of dollars, and they're going to want their money as quick as possible back, so they can move that money into other games, into other development, and with those kind of games, you just can't. It's not. You can't grow a fan base just by will alone. Like you really have to bring it from day one, and if you don't, people do not. There's plenty of other games out there that they can move to, and you just do not recoup that fan base. It just does not come back.
Yeah,
and that's the problem that I think a lot of these people have found. The exception probably is Destiny, and Destiny seemed to have waned back and forth. And I played a hell of a lot of Destiny. Like I don't know how much. Like I probably played at least 5 years of Destiny, and so I got half of my 10 years. So I think I deserve something from that. But
the fan base can come back, but it usually takes something extraordinary, like a No Man's Sky turnaround redemption story, which won the best ongoing game award.
So few and far between.
Totally.
I mean, the goodwill, because that Hello Games, like that whole thing is just like they're very lucky, and I think they know it because that goodwill is very hard to recapture. It's just like Hollywood actors, and with anybody like that, when people spend their money on something, it better be what they think it is. Just look at this game might prop again. I mean, there is going to be a certain amount of people that will not buy a game from them again, ever, or at least not on day one. So you have that same problem with, like, look at Anthem.
Yeah.
Anthem could have been amazing, but it just was not ready. And it did not have the plan. It was not ready. And I feel like Fallout was probably the same way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I even forgot about Fallout 76 entirely. That's the kind of shows. It shows, right? Yeah. Sean, what do you think about games as a service?
So this could have been probably my game of the generation, but there's a lot of reasons why there's other games that are a lot better. But coming from the company that does games as a service, great, Blizzard, Overwatch is still the game I have successfully still played at least daily, if not every few days, since launch. So the game's coming up to being 4 years old now.
16 it came out? Yeah, I think it came out in 16.
Yeah. So it's coming up into its 5th year now in April, I believe. And what Blizzard do, if you've ever played World of Warcraft or Hearthstone or any of their other titles, is they have the roadmap ahead of time, and they know kind of the beats, but because they've done it in their other games. The good thing about Overwatch is you'll be playing it for a long time as long as you have friends or a team that you would always play with. Because I've spoken to many people, including yourself, Ross. If you don't have regulars, then you are playing solo with people who don't chat, and the game is completely different if you're not communicating or doing team coordinated stuff. I'm happily fortunate enough to play always in a group of 6. I started on PS4 when it launched, and I play on PC as well now every lunchtime with the guys at Rebellion. And just the fact that, like, right now we've just entered the winter event, And every time there is an event, there is some legendary cool skins that you can get. There is events as well, so stuff that isn't the traditional mode. So now for this Christmas, we have this thing where it's 3 versus 3, and every time you get a kill, elimination, instead of them dying, they become frozen, and the team has to come up to defrost them.
Okay.
It's like really cool little things that they do every so often, and they still instill the single player campaign stuff that you play with for teams. So they every so often they have an anniversary event, and it's you versus the environment with the AI, all stuff that leads them up to Overwatch 2 as well. So happily would say Overwatch is my games as service thing, but that's a game that I've had to purchase. If I was to talk about a free-to-play equivalent, Apex Legends would always get my vote. From the love of Titanfall and Titanfall 2 and the universe not being a game that you buy, but you could buy the battle passes and stuff like that. Like Fortnite, you do play this game as a battle royale, and there is some campaign stuff if you hit the event at the right time of the year. But the fact that there's a battle royale that has really good character, like these characters, like in Overwatch, if you can take these characters out of their game and put them into another scenario, and you can know what they're going to say or interact or react with, you've got a good 3D character there. Same with like film and TV. If you take a good character and take them somewhere else, you kind of know what they would do. And the same with Apex. Like these characters kind of were all right to start off, nothing to run home and tell your family about, but the team there were just like, you know what, let's keep making these characters bigger and better and give them stories, give them cutscenes, give them comics, and these events where they kind of keep building, and it's just fantastic. Even so, now they've got like voice actor coming over from Overwatch now, who's got one of the main characters in there, and the worlds themselves are like, I know you can't be living, breathing in a battle royale, but some of these worlds are like, they feel like home because you know them so well, and it's done really well. Depending on who you speak to, they'll say Apex is kind of maybe not as great as it is, but for me, the fact that it's lasted this long and it's still being nominated in the Game Awards for Games of Service, it's fantastic. It's just like,
and like you're saying though, it's like you could take. I think that's one of the best indicators, especially for the free to play stuff. But even Overwatch is, you can take those characters and you could put them in an RPG, or you could put them in a regular action game. I mean, heck, even the world that, like in Fortnite, I know that people could argue, you could literally turn that into an action game. Like it could happen.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, if it's done correctly, and you can feel it. Maybe we need more of that, but
definitely do love it.
Yeah,
I do want an Overwatch RPG so bad. Like,
that would be amazing. I want to see the sequel campaign. Like, it does campaign so well, so we get to see what they do.
Well, remember when Overwatch first came out and they had these, I don't know if they still do because I don't really play it anymore, but they had these incredible animated short films for the characters, and I thought, this is really cool story stuff. Put this in the game, and it would be amazing as just like a proper like story-based game, whether it's still a shooter, whether it's something else, I don't really know. But the chops that Blizzard have, and I guess it comes from the size and the talent of them, it's like the money that they can throw behind these animated short films is pretty incredible stuff. But
it's so funny though. It's these characters that literally don't need to have a backstory. They don't need to have. It's the thing we were talking about, Ross, before, that over at Disney we're taught, the plus things, and that's one of the things that they've definitely done with Overwatch and with Anthem, and even it's so funny. In Fortnite, I did not expect it to be that way, but I've had people usually little kids going like, okay, if you go over in the caddy corner, that the guy who runs that, his name is blah 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 and blah blah blah, and I'm like, how do you know these things? Well, if you go into the wiki and blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh my god,
that's amazing.
What?
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
So it's awesome that people will put that much care into these things that they don't have to, and I think that is one of the big things, though, that separates some of these games.
Yeah.
And diversity and that roadmap, definitely. That roadmap has to be there.
Very, very much so. I think for me, the two ones that I can always come back to are Destiny and The Division. I don't play games of a service like constantly, like every single day I play it constantly. I tend to play them, like when they first came out, I play them, or whenever there's a new content drop, I play them for maybe like a few weeks constantly, and then I drop off them, but then I can always come back to them. And I think for Destiny 2 and The Division, they're just so much fun to just pick up and play and jump back into the world for a little bit. Then you drop off, then something new comes out, you jump back in. But also, Eric, go.
I will say the single greatest co-op experience with friends is beating a Destiny raid.
Oh,
yes. It is
Stuff of legend.
So hard and so amazing, and you will lose friends, but once you do it, you're all like running around the room, doing the airplane thing, just like it's just 4:00 in the morning, your wife is throwing you out of the house, but it's worth it. Like, it's totally worth it, because it's just my god, like we did this thing together as a group. And it's taken us an entire month to do it, but we did it.
Yeah.
So it's such a great experience.
They are the stuff of legend, but also a shout out to Warframe as well, because that's just been.
I was about to mention Warframe.
It's been quietly ticking along since 2010.
Another update I saw.
Just had a huge update. It's its main user base is on the PC, but it's on all the consoles as well. And I think they have cross-play as well, cross-platform play. It's even on Switch now, for crying out loud. And they don't have any fanfare. They never get raised up about making the headlines, really. They just keep on plugging away. They've got such a loyal fan base, and they just keep delivering constantly. And that is probably the finest example as a game as a service that has started and evolved with one IP all the way over this past decade, since it first originally came out as something tiny on the PC. And now it's huge, and the quality of the graphics are just insanely high for space ninjas and all this weird lore. It's overwhelming as hell. It's really tough to jump into and pick up, but it's one of those games where if you invest a lot of time into it and all the systems, the community is so passionate and so welcoming that if you want to be invested in it, there's always guides there that will help you out, and that I think is pretty impressive stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Just quick touch on Anthem. So Anthem was my biggest heartbreak of this generation, actually, because EA, BioWare coming together, fantastic. Love Mass Effect, love all that stuff, and the beta, it was just the action part of it. As I was like, cool, this ticks my boxes. Love being in a big mech suit. Can kind of get around doing a whole first-person bit in the hub, but the sad example for me with Anthem, this is the one example I always use, and it's the sad part about it is because it's BioWare, is there was a woman in the hub, and she was really sad that her son has gone off to war and she's not sure if he's still alive. So playing the story mode, the BioWare experience, I went up to her and said, cool, I will try and find your son, but I said to myself, I probably won't let her know that he's dead.
Right.
So I went off to the mission, I did some stuff, it was like a side thing, came back to her and said, your son's alive. He was actually dead. But I said, your son's alive. No. Sorry, take that back. I said, no, your son is dead. I wanted to put her out of misery. Your son is dead. Whatever. She was starting to cry. Whatever happened. An hour later, came back, and she started basically saying that I was her son. And I said, no. I an hour ago told you I'm not your son. No, I said your son is dead. Move on. Whatever's happened has happened. That's the end of the world for her. Whatever. Yeah. She came back, and none of the conversations I had mattered, and I was like, this isn't the least BioWare thing, because my choices didn't have the consequences that I thought I had there.
Yeah, and that's what BioWare is known for. It's those consequences. It's the decisions that you make, those RPG elements that carry over and have some kind of relevance to the story. That's what we expect from a BioWare game, and it just
you know what? She clearly was just very upset, Sean. You just did not talk to her correctly. It was
trauma.
Totally your fault.
Yeah.
Emotional trauma. She wanted you to be her son, Sean.
Yeah. But the way I tied up that story, it was so light and unlike BioWare. I was
I know.
And then when you think about Andromeda, I'm like, oh yeah.
But those flying mechanics were awesome.
Another show though, like talking about BioWare this last generation. Unfortunately,
I know.
Oh god, no, I set up Ross last week, and then we were just talking about Mass Effect, and oh my god, like you don't want that.
Don't get me. Yeah, we were talking about the Mass Effect 4 review. And then I went into a big rant about Mass Effect 3.
Wait, I can do the Mass Effect reveal right here. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm a blue alien.
Wow. Dead ringer. They could have saved a fortune, just cast you, Eric, and that was it, done.
Yeah.
He's not even blue.
Just get a little N7 markered onto your beanie and you'll be sorted.
Yeah, totally cool. You dress as Pikachu. I'm totally there.
Oh, God. Okay, guys. So let's begin to wrap up by what does this generation mean for you all? Now that we're sunsetting the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, we're transitioning into PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, X and S. The games are still going to be supported cross-generation for a little while. We know, certainly in terms of the PlayStation library, Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, they're going to be coming out on both systems. We don't know yet about the Xbox side of things, if it's going to be supported on last gen or if it's only going to be series platforms going forward. But when you think about the last generation, what does it mean to you guys? What do you think about it? Liban?
For me, last generation gave me the opportunity to change my perception on certain game series where I kind of just put it in one box. But once I played a certain title, that kind of just changed everything for me. And an example for me is God of War. So previous to that, obviously, I've not played any of the other God of War games. Friends and colleagues always tell me about, oh, God of War, yeah, it's great. Like Kratos, he goes around, like, just kills a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, Eric's favorite activity, you know, chopping heads off. And
Very much.
And so in my mind, it just became a sense of, well, I don't understand what's so great about it. It's essentially, I dubbed it Violent the Game. That was it. So I was like, okay, so it's just a game that if you want to be violent.
He's an angry man simulator, pretty much. Yeah.
Literally. So I think what changed it for me, obviously, was God of War on the PS4. Actually sitting down, giving it a chance, you know, seeing, and obviously shout outs to Santa Monica as well, because they changed so much of it as well from what I've seen and heard. So credit to them for taking, I think, a risk like that in some way, because so many people were used to Kratos being a certain way before.
Yeah.
And now you've got him there with his son, and he had a wife, he's not there anymore. And he's like, boy, every like 10 seconds. And, you know, and going on that journey with them through the lands and going to different realms put me on a complete 180 when it came to God of War.
Yeah.
So I think obviously just going back and appreciating that, that's what the generation meant to me. Just giving certain games a chance, you know, like trying to just look outside the box a little bit, like change my perception. And this made me really happy to play God of War because, quite frankly, that was my game of that last generation.
Yeah.
100%.
Wow. Yeah. Eric, you want to go next?
I think we hit a certain degree of storytelling with the last generation that is definitely a benchmark. And you know, God of War definitely being one of the biggest ones, and the fidelity was there. Like we were getting there. But now looking into next gen, I feel like we're finally like at a level to where, you know, that thing that we always said is like, oh, it'll, like a Pixar movie. That was always our thing, you know, our you know, that what we always compared, you know, the next gen graphics.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I feel like some of the games look better than Pixar movies now, and so we have the gameplay there, we have the fidelity there, and we have the storytelling there, and that's the thing I'm most excited for, is just these amazing, diverse, just crazy gameplay, you know, games with these amazing stories, and that's what the takeaway from, you know, last gen into the next gen that I'm most excited for.
Yeah, Sean.
I would say last gen was a good testament that single player games isn't dead. Like Liban said, with God of War and like Horizon and all the stuff. Like just hearing that multiplayer and co-op and stuff, as much as I love it, that is the future. I'm like, no, look at Spider-Man, look at, you know, The Last of Us, look at all of these things. They're really cool. So that's like my small take on it. But I think for this upcoming gen, the one thing I really, really, really wanted, and they started to do, especially in the last year, was, you know, cross-platform play.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can play on your console against other people on consoles. The thing that people didn't think was ever going to be achievable, like thinking, oh, who's going to moderate it if you're playing on Switch and someone swears at you on PlayStation, which format will tell that person off, and all these things that felt like it never was going to be a thing. And then like 2019, 2020, you know, we're starting to get these games that you can play Call of Duty against someone that's on PC, or you can play Apex Legends against someone that's on Xbox, or you can play Fortnite against almost anywhere. And all of these games, it's like the dream of a kid or whoever getting a game on their format and their parent accidentally getting the one that isn't for the format that their friends are on, and still being able to play together still. Yeah. Like, it just eliminates like an overarching problem of, oh, I've got it on this and I am now never going to play with my friends again, but I like the quality, I like the controller, I like my friend circle on this. And then that was it. Like, we grew up having people say, you got it on the wrong format, you're never going to play with us because, you know, you're inferior, la-di-da, whatever, PC Master Race. Yeah. And now we can play games on individual formats. Like, I could play on PC, you guys can play on Xbox, Switch, and PS4, PS5. And there are going to be games potentially in the future that can continue doing that. In fact, probably even more crossover. And it's just fantastic that is now a thing that we have seen in reality now. Yeah. Like, it just makes it so much easier for all generations of gamers as well as generations of consoles.
Yeah. And one last thing I'd like to throw in, though, is like we've seen the beginning, the birth, though, of like the Stadias and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm, and I'm curious to see where that's going into the next generation as well. Yeah. I mean, for God's sakes, it's crazy. I've heard from multiple people that one of the best versions of Cyberpunk was on Stadia. I mean, that's just crazy. Like, that's just crazy to think.
Yeah. For me, I think looking back at this generation, there are a number of things that I love about this generation of what it's established. A lot of it is things that you guys have already covered. I think a lot of it is seeing franchises evolve, like what Liban said with God of War. It allows things that you, like preconceptions that you maybe had about something, it's been given the opportunity to really evolve into something different, find new audiences, things coming back to find new audiences as well. But also it's games as a whole on both of the platforms, like backward compatibility opened up the ability to rediscover like old games and old classics that have been given maybe like a little bit of a boost by part of that backward compatibility process. But also going into like PlayStation, we got the entire Yakuza series ported over to PlayStation 4, and that allowed new gamers who didn't have a PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 to then experience the entirety of that series. And now it's come to Game Pass on Xbox, and Game Pass as well as an incredible new thing. It was a huge moment for the industry to have this Netflix style of subscription come to a gaming platform. So there's all of these things that this generation has given us, and I would be remiss to not mention this past kind of year and into last year as well, as how prominent accessibility has now become. It's now come to the forefront of games. And for me, that really started with the adaptive controller that Xbox were in partnership with numerous organizations, not least Special Effect. That is this one that's very dear to my heart, and we do a lot of charity work for them. But to see that level of investment, to say, you know what, it's the Xbox tagline where, like, when everybody plays together, when everybody can play, everyone wins. And it's so true. And to see, like, the Game Awards have an accessibility award now, going into the next generation, it's so encouraging to see, okay, how can video games be opened up for even more people that it might have been a barrier to? And Game Pass taps into that by letting people that are not sure about accessibility settings within a game to then try for next to no money, rather than having to drop a large chunk of money and they have no idea if they can actually play the game or not. So there's so many things that I'm super excited for going into the next 7, 8 years, 10 years, however long this PlayStation 5 series generation lasts for us. What a time to be a gamer. It's incredible.
Exactly.
That's so good.
It's definitely something that I'm curious about as well, to see that it's so awesome that we do have the accessibility and the choice.
Yeah.
The choice of where to play your games on. It's such a crazy thing that I can play most of those indie games we're talking about. A good chunk of them I can play on my phone and they look great. Most of them play decent, or on my Switch or on my PlayStation or whatever. It's so great. Like, it is such a great time to be a gamer.
Yeah.
Plus, I get to play with you guys. that makes it better.
Absolutely. Liban, you wanted to say something there.
Yeah, so as we're wrapping up, I just wanted to throw out another question to you guys. I just think of questions. That's what I do.
That's good.
All right, so obviously we're saying goodbye to the previous gen. I'll be obviously remiss not to say as well, obviously, the 3DS ending production a couple of months back. Yeah, so that's been finally finished. Obviously, eventually that was going to happen with the Switch being the way it is. I pointed that way because it's over there. But now what I'm hoping is obviously those 3DS games don't get lost on that platform, that they eventually do bring that over, because it had so many great titles. But obviously now that we're heading into, we're leaving the year, the hellhole that was 2020, we're going into 2021 now. And we were talking about remasters and remakes and such earlier. We've seen quite a lot of them. I do expect to see some way more going forward. Is there a game for you guys that you want to be brought back, remaster or remake, for the current gen, 2021 or above or forward?
Okay, I'll go first if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The one that I most wanted has already been announced, and that's the Mass Effect trilogy. I badly wanted that, and I would love for that to come to Switch as well. I'd love to be able to play that on Switch. But I don't know if it will, but if we get a really good remaster remake that's not just an up-res, there's a bit more care given to it, then I would love... That's my kind of... It was my most wanted for the whole generation. We never got it, but now we're getting it in like February or sometime. I don't know when.
Sometime in 2021.
Question in the back from the Texan with the microphone.
Probably Tales of Symphonia. I would love a Final Fantasy VII type remake of some of the older Tales games, but Tales of Symphonia was like my first real I love you JRPG, I would absolutely love. I don't know if you guys ever picked it up, but like it definitely needs one of those. I remember it being awesome. It needs one of those polishes. So that'd probably be mine.
Yeah. Sean?
I'm gonna choose the one that most people would probably shout out for, but I would love to see Metal Gear again. It had a remaster.
Oh, it was like an HD kind of thing it had, HD collection.
I'll say Twin
doesn't
Snakes.
talk about that.
Twin Snakes was a version that was on the
Okay.
GameCube, which was remade, and they implemented Metal Gear Solid 2 mechanics into the game. It kind of broke it a little bit, and they had like a film director, redo the cutscene. But I think with the rumors and stuff that Blue Point potentially are working on it, like there was like an Easter egg within Demon Souls that you can hear something that sounds like Metal Gear X in the background of the Nexus, and with the film now, heading to
Right.
production
So
potentially.
Otacon doesn't just like dial you up mid boss fight or something and say, Snake!
Can Sony just go ahead and buy that franchise? Yeah, I do want that, and I want that game like completely just certified as much as possible.
Yeah.
Great pick. Oh,
Yeah, and I would want, this is going to be controversial, but I would want Hideo to not be involved as well. Because like George Lucas, when you're so close to
Sure.
a game or a franchise like that, you're going to still be making it your vision. And when you introduce other people's expanded ideas, sometimes it works really well. Like Hideo being the lovely diva that I know that he is also the reason why I didn't really enjoy Death Stranding so much, because he doesn't have an editor. The best things, if you look at the Metal Gear Solid series, Metal Gear Solid 1 was great. He had an editor. He had free reign for number 2, not the best. 3, he had an editor again. 4, not the best. And then 5, he was taken off, obviously. And I think if there was to be a remake of Metal Gear, he's done so much work for the franchise that there is enough source material that they probably don't need to talk to him about.
Yeah.
So for him to be on the side, maybe as a consultant, but have, fresh new mechanics and ideas and, people come on board who is up to date with it. Sorry?
Did you ever play the Twin Snakes?
I did. I love Twin Snakes, but I think it was fundamentally a little bit easier because you can do the first person mode in it, which they introduced in the second one. You can hang over the balconies and you can do the forward roll.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was like, it felt like the game was easier, but also it felt like more of a love letter than a remake, because it was the same game, but they tweaked a lot of the mechanics so much that it felt like a 1.5. I just want someone to come in and be like, we love this game so much. This is our game, and Bluepoint would be the team.
So, yeah, maybe the team from Demon Souls, like bring them in to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they did a fantastic Titanfall for Xbox 360 when the Xbox One version came out. Like, so much so that edition stood up against a next-gen version of the game. And obviously, we spoke about Shadow of the Colossus as well. So they are the team, and apparently they are rumored to be the one to go for this. I would love Metal Gear to come back.
I would also love a Splinter Cell to come back. That's sorely missing.
Oh, God.
Sorely missing.
Yeah.
But Liban, answer your own question, brother. Come on.
Oh my God! Do you know what? Yeah, Sam Fisher's appearing everywhere apart from his own damn game. Yeah, and it baffles me to no end how that's even a thing. Like, clearly they have love for the character, because otherwise he wouldn't show up in all these other games and stuff. But not enough love to make another game.
I know.
The love meter is not high enough.
Do you think the character as Sam Fisher is more popular than the series? Because he is fantastic. I play using his character in Rainbow Six Siege. He's great, but do you think the game has... I mean, thinking about Splinter Cell, I love Splinter Cell, but from Splinter Cell to Pandora Tomorrow to Chaos Theory to all this stuff, the game kind of fundamentally keeps changing to become less about what it used to be and more about, the mark and execute stuff that we had in the last game. And that was so different to the original game.
I would love
remaster
my ideal brand new modern Splinter Cell game would be the cutting edge graphics, the cutting edge parkour stuff of Blacklist, which is phenomenal with the movement and everything. But I would very much love it to take a Hitman model where you have these huge sandboxes and you have objectives. Almost, it could almost be like a Perfect Dark Hitman kind of crossover sort of thing where you have multiple objectives in these huge sandboxes, cyber thriller stuff, and you've got all the gadgets and stuff. It's third person. That would be my kind of dream comeback for Splinter Cell. But I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon, so I'm resting all my hopes on the new Perfect Dark, whatever that's going to be when it comes out. So, don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh man, like the only thing I want going forward is I just don't want the 3DS library to be lost.
Yeah.
A lot of those games are not available on the Switch, and I mean a lot, probably like 90% of them. Actually, all of them. I should say all of them. All of them are not available on the Switch. Especially Luigi's Mansion 2
Two's on the DS.
2's
Yep.
a 3DS game,
Yep.
but 3 is a Switch game. So that disparity there is just a little bit weird to me. Obviously, I know Nintendo's like trickling out their older games very, very slowly, albeit via their online service, like super slow. I can't imagine a day we'll ever reach N64 stuff. But the 3DS games library is definitely one that I want to come over to the Switch just to boost its backlog as well. Not that the Switch needs it, but I think it would just be a really cool addition to that.
That'd be good. Even if they packaged it up like they did with the Super Mario collection. If they packaged up like even like more but just like DS games emulated into the Switch, I'd be happy with that stuff as well.
Oh, the Super Mario collection. Okay. All right. So
he's been triggered, folks. He's been triggered.
So I get it.
Yep.
It's a nice little wrapped up collection.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure why they left Mario 64 the way it was.
I know.
They upgraded some of the textures and stuff, but no widescreen support.
Yeah.
No resolution up boost. They did it for Sunshine, which looks so good. They did it for Galaxy, which looks amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
But not Mario 64. Like, it baffles me to no end.
I know.
Right now, I just don't understand.
Well, save this for a future show rant about Switch's business decisions, Nintendo's business decisions, maybe.
Yeah, definitely an entire episode.
Yeah. Okay, let's call it there. That has been an amazing bumper show, our end of the year Christmas show. So everybody who's been tuning in, we've got a few stragglers that have managed to maintain the entire duration. So thank you for those. Guys, just take care of yourselves. Enjoy your Christmas. Have some time off if you can. Enjoy the games. If you're lucky enough to get some games over Christmas, then please have fun. Let us know in the group what you're having fun with. I hope you have a great new year when it comes around as well. And we'll all be back for future shows of the Weekend Catch-Up Club in 2021. That's crazy to say that, but there you go. The year is done. Here's to a better year, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Please, a better year.
I want to hug people again. Please.
I know. Virtual hugs. Bring it in, yo. Bring it in.
Happy Christmas.
Take care, guys. Happy Christmas.
Eric's taking someone's head off as usual.